Good morning. Welcome. It's so great to see you here today. Welcome to First Unitarian Church. Welcome to those who are joining us online. We're glad that you're here. Welcome to our visitors. You are our honored guests. We're so glad everyone is here, however you're joining us. We invite you to stay after service for coffee. We've got an online coffee hour as well, so you're welcome for that. I have a few announcements as we get started. First, I want to start with some good news. Our high schoolers went up this week. I know, it's amazing. Our high schoolers went up this week and testified to the Minority Caucus about the state of our Salt Lake. And they were supported by our environmental ministry team, Ysaye M. And I'm drawing a blank. Who was with you? Liz Waite.
Yes, Liz Waite.
Yes, Liz Waite. Yeah, supported our young people. So if you see them, if you see the high schoolers, if you see our environmental ministry team, please thank them for all the hard work they're doing at all ages to support our lake. Next week, we will have a new member ceremony during worship. If you have been thinking about joining the church, now is your chance, and we would love to have you. Please email me. If you tell me, I won't remember. I promise I will forget. So please email me and let me know that you would like to become a new member. We'd love to celebrate you in our worship service. This week on Tuesday night is the fourth Tuesday, and that means it's Teams Night. This is our time every month when our teams get together and organize their work for volunteer work for our church. We're adding a new team this month, the Generosity Team. This team is going to be working on all of the fundraising opportunities for our congregation, as well as other kinds of generosity, time, talent, treasure, as they say. We serve pizza at 6:30, and then we have teams starting at 7 o'clock with free childcare. So we really want you to be there. This month, we'll be working on budget proposals. So super important. If you're on a team, please make time to be there. And speaking of generosity, I want to give you a pledge update, and I'm so excited, y'all. We're halfway through, and we have raised more than half of our $500,000 goal. We're at $280,000. Yeah. It's so exciting. And listen, that's not all. We had a goal of 20 new pledges. We're at 7, so we still have a little ways to go there. We had a goal of 20 households increasing their pledge. Guess what? We doubled it. 41 households, and we're not even halfway there yet, right? And we had a goal for 2 households to tip over the 10,000 mark, and we reached it. I'm so excited, y'all. You deserve a hand. Give yourselves a hand. Great job. Now listen, we still got half to go, right? And the goal is to have it all in by March 19th. We will take your money at any time of the year. But if you could please get your pledge in by March 19th, it would really be a lot for us. Thank you. Finally, we are looking for people to apply to be General Assembly delegates to represent our congregation at the annual UUA General Assembly. If that sounds like something that would be interesting to you, please reach out to me. Our Board of Trustees will be selecting the delegates, and we do have a little application for you to fill out. It will take some of your time, but you can also do it from home, so you don't have to travel to Pittsburgh to be a delegate. We'd love to hear from you, so just reach out to me if that's something that sounds interesting to you. And finally, we welcome once again to the pulpit Ruen-Chuan Ma for our lay ministry today. Thank you. Now, we begin our worship with the lighting of the chalice. Today, I bring you these words by James Luther Adams. A living tradition is not bequeathed through some law of inheritance. It must be earned, not without dust and heat, and not without humbling grace. Now I invite you to rise with me in body or in spirit, and we'll sing together from the gray hymnal, number 34.
The signs of malaise and misalignment taking shape in my head were hard to ignore, and then I found a message from a fortune cookie broken and eaten long ago. A vigorous hike and fresh air are just what you need. Months of lockdown spent mostly indoors, lecturing into a mosaic-like void of darkened icons that were supposedly students, and watching an infinite loop of baking shows, murder mysteries, classic movies, rewired my brain. I grew uneasy at the hodgepodge of screens that seemed to pale my complexion with their pale light, and I longed to have a different, deeper, more engaging kind of fellowship with my surroundings. One day, as I taught a 14th century poem containing a vivid description of the hallmarks of seasonal change, hard ice and frost giving way to delicate blooms that herald warmth, which transformed the landscape with lush greenery that eventually turned into golden leaves in the cool, crisp air, I could no longer ignore how disconnected I felt from the passage of time. And I knew there and then what I needed. I needed to see an unobstructed horizon and watch the setting sun growing brilliant as it descended, so that I could feel a real and illuminating closure to the day. I needed to take time to listen to the sound of my footfalls on the ground as confirmation that I existed outside four walls and away from screens, that I still walked this earth and could marvel in awe rather than shrink in fear at what it contained. It was more than a desire to walk among nature for a change of scenery. It was a call to find better mental balance and recover alignment, to repair the severed connection between myself and the outside world. The profound, unspoken mysteries of the earth called and invited me to discover new ways of looking, listening, knowing, and feeling. For me, this deeper sense of calling was reinvigorating, and it was this energy that made it motivating, almost irresistible in its potential for greater hope. I found different trails in and around the city for my daily walks, allowing my mind and body to traverse the foothills and to be able to draw a line under the overwhelming unease. It took effort to find a meditative focal point and build greater mental and spiritual space around it. But the walks afforded me a natural rhythm of movement, and I directed my efforts to the sounds of my footfalls as they changed over the shifts in elevation and terrain. Every step was a small act of resistance against gravity, against fatigue from a long day's work, cycling through the seasons against mud, rock, leaves, snow, and ice. Wherever I lived, I've always enjoyed moving through cityscapes, woods, waterfronts, and trails on foot, while taking in the sights, sounds, and sensations I encountered. These daily walks magnified the sense of awareness, and I grew to love the foothills not just for the sweeping landscapes and the sense of refuge, but for the chance to bring the workings of my mind and spirit into kinship rather than isolation from the wider world. Soon, drawn in by this meditative focus, other pursuits extended themselves into my walks and enriched the practice of reconnection. I started a studious habit of taking photos and studying the landscapes and sceneries that I encountered: undulating contours in the mountains, rocky outcrops jutting out from layers of soil, shifts in plant life and vegetation, boundaries of light and shadow. A longtime reader of fiction, I started reading nonfiction works about landscape and geology, writings that made me realize the deep archive of time, rhythm, and movement embodied by the rock layers and mountains surrounding us. Stretch marks of the earth, as one writer called them. I started to bring my journal on walks, recording the calm or bracing feeling of the wind, the punctuated pattern of bird calls, and the multi-layered splendor of color in the sunset. The sunset became a key pivoting point in my daily consciousness, going from one day to the next with certainty and renewed vigor, like a musical rest when all movement ceases, so that the piece can build up poise to start anew. The calling of the earth showed me how to find new spiritual ground. Week after week for the past 3 years, I've ventured out to walk, reflect, meditate, write, and deposit my thoughts and emotions like one who buries treasures for safekeeping. Familiar trails and foothills hold joy, relief, curiosity, frustration, pain, and heartbreak. And when I return home to the city below, the hills surrounding the city let my emotions embrace me, not in angst, but with comfort.
I invite you to take a breath with me. And join me in a spirit of meditation. Today we are putting love at the center. Love for our world, love for our community, love for our neighbor, love for ourselves. Let this moment be the only moment. Just be right here, right now. And then ask yourself what your community needs. Your church, your neighborhood, maybe your book club or your school, whatever community means to you right now. And then whatever that need is, ask for it. Ask for what your community needs as a question. Whatever kind of question feels right to you right now. May we have a front door that never gets stuck, please. I'd like all the laws that violate human rights to be defeated. Ask for what your community needs. Now think about what your neighbor needs. Think of someone who is a neighbor to you and see them clearly in your mind. What do they need? Their driveway shoveled, a warm meal and a safe place to sleep at night, someone to listen to them, and then ask for it. May they be well. May they have what they need. Next, ask yourself what you need. A day off to clean the house? Or to do nothing? A change of scenery, maybe. Release from something that's had a hold on you. It's okay to stop and figure out what you need, and it's okay to ask for it. Too often we cut ourselves off from our needs, especially if the need feels too big or if it feels like an imposition on others. It's okay to honor yourself and your own needs. Try asking now. And then finally, turn your inner eye to the world, the whole world, as much of the world as you can hold in your mind. What does this world need? If nothing comes to mind, or if no answer seems the right size, it's okay to just hang out in the mystery of that. None of us have to save the world by ourselves. Thank goodness, because none of us can. I invite you to come back into the space, into your body, into your breath. What we are doing here is not grounded in the supernatural, though it may turn out to be magic of a kind. Often we are good at identifying problems, but we tend to skip right ahead to how to fix them, because we forget that most problems are not solved by individuals, but by people working together. And that doesn't happen by accident. It takes intention and communication, even to get what you need for yourself. Just to pour yourself a bowl of cereal, you have to have the cereal and the milk and the bowl, all of which came from someone else. After identifying a need, pausing to ask, to put the need into a form of a question, helps us release the anxiety of feeling like we have to do everything ourselves. So my hope for you today is that you find your way to everything that you asked for, everything you need, everything the world needs, and that help arrives right on time. Amen. In this moment of asking for what we need, being grateful for what we receive, we arrive at the offertory. Perfect timing, right? It's like I planned it. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, our church community is supported entirely by and depends upon the contributions of its members and friends. We're so grateful for whatever you're able to give, and we hope that you remember that you're giving to each other. We're all doing this together. So, in that spirit, we accept your generous offerings. You can also give with the QR code that's in the pew in front of you, and also take a moment to say hello. Well, I really enjoyed receiving the feedback from the big reveal last week. If you weren't here last week, I'll give you a very quick recap so that you won't be lost. Visitors, I'm sorry, you might just be lost for a couple of minutes. But I promise I'll give you a way to catch back up. So, the Unitarian Universalist Association has before it a proposal to revise Article 2, which is the part of the UUA bylaws that includes our principles, sources, purposes, and covenant that is shared by Unitarian Universalists continent-wide. And this new proposal does not include 7 or 8 principles or any principles at all. That's right. They are proposing to replace the principles in our UUA bylaws with 7 values. And I made you a poster so you can see them. Equity, generosity, interdependence, pluralism, transformation, and justice, with love at the center. I encourage you, if you weren't here, to visit our YouTube channel and visit last week's sermon so that you can get a bigger sense of what's going on and how this came about. So I wanted to share with you some of the feedback that I heard last week. First, people liked the shift to values. One person said that for them, their principles derive from their values, not the other way around. So they liked seeing values instead of principles. Several of you told me that you liked it, that they weren't numbered, right? No. That way each principle has equal weight, right? They're all equal. There's not like a top principle and a bottom principle and who knows what's happening in between, right? They're all equal. Now, in the past, UUs have tended to put more emphasis on the first principle. And that can become sort of self-focused and individualistic. So this new model is based more on community, not individuals. A few of you were glad to see love take center stage because you think of this as the love church. Aww, I know, that's great. And many of you said that you appreciated the shift to action words because we are indeed a people who take action for love. It's not enough to just feel love. We have to act on it. Now, I did hear a few people say that it would be harder to talk about our faith without the principles to serve as an elevator speech. Okay. We've got time. This won't become official until June 2024 at the earliest. So we've got lots of time to talk about it, learn about it, think about it. And listen, somewhere out there in UU land, including right here in our church, there are religious educators who are already hard at work creating graphics and songs and stories and pamphlets, who knows what all, describing the new values to people of all ages. We can always rely on our religious educators and our youth to lead the way. And all we have to do is get in line and follow along. Now, several of you pointed out to me after last week's sermon that the graphic that you received on the flyer that we handed out said evolution, while the text says transformation. Whoops. It just goes to show that this is still a work that's very much in progress, right? With people all across the continent talking about this proposal. And so the way that we talk about it is changing day by day. But I can confirm that the text that went to the UUA board says transformation. So that's the proposal that we're working with, and that's what I've included here. Now, you can probably imagine that the language of Article 2 is being vigorously debated by religious professionals. How do these changes align with the historical movement of Unitarianism and Universalism throughout the centuries? What would our religious ancestors say about these values? Would they recognize them as their own? What might be missing that simply must be carried down from our heritage? For example, one earlier version of the text didn't include any language about freedom of conscience. Yikes, that seems like something we don't want to leave out. So it got included in a revision. It takes many minds working together to make sure that all the load-bearing pillars of our faith remain standing. Religious professionals are thinking in other ways about the theological weight that these values can carry. What are the great problems of our time, and how do these values address them? When we face problems that seem unsolvable, problems like racism or climate disaster, will these values be adequate to equip us for the long haul? And at an even more basic level, what do they mean? My eye is on love, because of the 7 values proposed, love seems, well, kind of like the squishiest, right? What even is love? A million songs and poems have tried to define it, but our culture still doesn't seem to know what it is. It seems like the value that is least oriented toward action, because we are inclined to think of love as a feeling. A generation of people banked everything on love being enough to solve our problems. Think of young people sticking daisies in the barrels of guns, right? Or John Lennon singing, "All you need is love." Then those same young people growing up and being quite surprised to learn that love had not fixed much. In fact, the problems had grown more monstrous and intractable than ever. The revision of the principles in the 1980s, the addition of the 7th principle, these were attempts to give UUs more practical tools for the work of faith. Yet, practical tools wielded without love can become useless and even destructive. A familiar passage of a letter written by the Apostle Paul over 2,000 years ago, which we sang in our opening hymn, points to this problem. If I speak in the tongues of humans and of angels, but do not have love, I'm a noisy gong or clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I'm nothing. If I give away all my possessions, and if I hand over my body so I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Virtually all the religions of the world point to love in some form as essential to the religious life. Buddhism calls it compassion. Hinduism calls it devotion. For Jews, the love of God and neighbor are religion distilled into its purest form. So we can be sure that love is at home in the center of our religious values. But we also need to get much clearer about what we mean when we say love before we can make much use of it. How do we learn to love in action? If love is an action, what are the skills of love? How can we know when we are acting from a place of genuine love, or even really know what that is? The Black feminist scholar Bell Hooks wrote about this search for clarity around love. She, too, devoted much of her life to love as a source of power for change, recognizing that even when we see little evidence of love's existence, it is in our nature to long for it. She wrote, "Everywhere we learn that love is important, and yet we are bombarded by its failure. In the realm of the political, among the religious, in our families, and in our romantic lives, we see little indication that love informs decisions, strengthens our understanding of community, or keeps us together. This bleak picture in no way alters the nature of our longing. We still hope that love will prevail. We still believe in love's promise." Hooks had trouble getting her colleagues to take her work on love seriously. She recalled that when she brought up the subject with her peers, they became nervous or scared, and even suggested that she try therapy instead of writing seriously on the subject. Of course, now, Bell Hook's volume, All About Love, is a classic of social justice literature. Hooks realized that most people were frightened of what might be revealed in any exploration of the meaning of love in our lives. Or in the words of Hook's contemporary Diane Ackerman, as a society, we are embarrassed by love. We reluctantly admit to it. Even saying the word makes us stumble and blush. Love is the most important thing in our lives, a passion for which we would fight or die, and yet we're reluctant to linger over its name. Without a supple vocabulary, we can't even think or talk about it directly. And I found that to be true. How many of us feel uncomfortable saying I love you to anyone but our immediate family? Why can't we say it to our friends? If we intend to act from an ethic of love for all people, then really, why can't we say I love you to anyone we meet? Hooks was determined to get specific about love, especially how it intersects with power. She drew on the work of sociologist Erich Fromm, using his definition of love, the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth. Wow. Let's hear that again. Love is defined as the will to extend one's self for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth. Fromm wrote, "Love is as love does. Love is an act of will, namely, both an intention and an action. Will also implies choice. We do not have to love. We choose to love." Hooks took this as a tool to challenge the idea that love is instinctual. Love isn't something that just happens to us. It is a choice, a network of choices that must be sustained by ongoing choices. And she argued that to think of love as an action rather than a feeling is one way in which anyone using this word in this manner automatically assumes accountability and responsibility. If love is a choice, then we must take responsibility for our choices, including the choice to do nothing. This is starting to feel like a love with enough substance to uphold a life of faith. Okay, so now we have a little bit of the what. Next, we need a little bit of the how. What skills specifically can we cultivate in our pursuit of active love? Well, Hooks points to care, affection, recognition, respect, commitment, trust, and open communication. To these, I would add the development of healthy boundaries, listening to understand rather than to fix, presence, showing up. Maybe you have your own. But I need it to be simple, because the world around us would like for this love to be too complicated to act on, right? Growing up, we were taught to love our neighbors, but loving our neighbors suddenly becomes so difficult when our neighbors are the subject of a city council meeting. Or when our neighbor is an ancient lake being dredged for precious minerals that keep our society moving. Or even when our neighbor is simply a pain in the rear, right? When our neighbor is someone who doesn't know love, doesn't know how to love, doesn't know how to receive love, doesn't recognize love when they see it. Like the people who are upset about wokeness, when really getting woke is just about learning new ways to love unfamiliar people. Like people who have suffered trauma and refuse love, turn away help, act in ways that seem counter to their benefit. like people who have become obsessed with power and have limited their own access to love just in case love should crack their hearts open and overcome them. Everywhere we learn that love is important, and yet we are bombarded by its failure. In the realm of the political, among the religious, in our families, and in our romantic lives, we see little indication that love informs decisions, strengthens our understanding of community, or keeps us together. This bleak picture in no way alters the nature of our longing. We still hope that love will prevail. We still believe in love's promise. The Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh had much to say about the practices of love. Like bell hooks, he said that love is a beautiful word, but we have to restore its meaning. True love, he said, includes a sense of responsibility. In true love, there's no more separation or discrimination. His happiness is your happiness. Your suffering is his suffering. You can no longer say, "That's not my problem." In true love, happiness and suffering are no longer individual matters. You are him, and he is you. Now, I don't think that the teacher is advocating for poor personal boundaries here, okay? In fact, what he and Hooks share in their exploration of love is that love starts with loving oneself, accepting oneself just as you are, really accepting your own inherent worth and dignity. And what a relief that is when compared with the teachings of religions that say that we are born in sin, that we need to repent just for being alive. Instead, if we really understand our inherent worth and dignity, if we can really feel that and carry on with life as if it is true, then we cannot help but see that dignity and worthiness in every other person. We cannot help but see that all humans share a common destiny, and therefore the suffering of one person is the suffering of all people, and all people are responsible for relieving that suffering. This is a starting point for our investigation of the 7 values of Unitarian Universalism, an active love that accepts oneself and accepts responsibility for the welfare of others and the welfare of the world. It is through such acts of love that we earn the inheritance of which James Luther Adams speaks, with the dust and heat of hard work and the humbling grace of being truly present to the world. May it be so. Our closing hymn, we did it a few weeks ago, and it's so beautiful it deserves a little more practice. Does that tell you what you need to know? Number 1020. Now here's what we're going to do. We're going to sing it through 2 whole times. The first time, if you know it, or if you're a choir member with a big voice, sing it so that the rest of us can learn it. Then we'll sing it through together, and if you get lost, it's okay. Just follow along and enjoy it. Please rise, 1020. Our closing words today by the Reverend Maureen Killoran. This is the message of our faith: to act with passion in the face of injustice, to love with courage in the midst of life's pain. May this flame of love empower us until we are together again. We are singing, heaven knows what we are singing, but just turn the page. Y'all are champs. Thank you. Thanks for singing that. Thank you, David, for leading us. Thank you, choir members, for leading us. Thank you, Sunday volunteers, and thanks, Palmer, for covering for Tristan once again. Really appreciate it. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Thanks for making community today. Please stay and have some coffee and talk amongst yourselves.